authorities say she proves she can seduce men into doing whatever she wants.
Pike is a fairly notorious killer in the state of Tennessee.
The cunning plot by a brutal killer to escape from death row.
She's one of the most dangerous women in America.
Police say the murder suspects were close to the victim.
An autopsy confirmed she was slashed repeatedly with a meat cleaver and some other small cutting device.
Scared. Won't tell me what it was. It was satanic stuff.
Hello, my loves. Welcome to True Crime and Wine. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherilyn, and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me every single upload. I love and I appreciate you so much. I have missed you guys. It's been a week, but it feels like a year. I started off last week not feeling the best. I thought it was food poisoning, maybe flu. Then I think it had something to do with starting new medication. I don't know. It was just not fun, but I got through it. So excited about filming, and then bam, my family gets hit with something else. So yesterday we spent the whole day sleeping, which was kind of cute, but also kind of sad because it was Reverie's first birthday. Clout baby is 1 year old. If you follow me on Instagram, you already saw her little post, and I thank you guys all so much for saying happy birthday to her. She loves her true crime fam just as much as I do. But yeah, so I really intended on filming so this would be out for Wednesday, but are we surprised that it's not? I wish I was feeling a little bit better and that I had more time to work on my hair here because I got like little Bellamy clip-ins and they're really not blended very well. But I'm feeling so drained right now and I'm like, I can't play with them anymore. So I'm sorry if they're driving you crazy. They're also driving me crazy where they're not blended. Okay, I'm not going to make you guys wait any longer. Did that feel like my mouth was moving and like not like I was like an anime character? To me, that felt like my mouth was moving and I was saying things that my mouth wasn't lining up with. I'll have to see what that looks like on the playback. Anyways, maybe I'm still a little loopy from the Neocitrin. Okay, I'm not going to make you guys wait anymore. Let's get into this. Before we do, I have a quick message for you. Before we get started, I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor today, PDS Debt. I wish I would have known about a solution like PDS Debt when I was at a point in my life where I felt like I was drowning and that there was no way possible that I was going to get myself out of the financial trouble that I had gotten myself into. If you don't know what PDS Debt is, they are a financial service company whose goal is to provide financial peace of mind through effective and fair debt management services that is customized to your personal circumstance. What they do is they roll all of your payments into one low 0% interest payment that you pay monthly, not only making it manageable for you to deal with, but it also can save you thousands in interests and fees. To me, the concept of having everything rolled into one payment and not feeling like you're being pulled in so many different directions, and when you look at the amounts, it just all feels so overwhelming when they're coming from everywhere, that one monthly payment just seems like more of a comfort to me. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can pay your debt off in a fraction of the time. I just remember feeling so overwhelmed at times, trying to figure out which card was maxed and what was my minimum payment. What loan company had I gone to, and the interest rate was astronomical. How many days until payday so that I could pay a phone company off that I was already cut off from and I didn't even have a phone with, but I needed to pay down what I owed so that I didn't go to the creditors. And still in doing all of this, those amounts aren't budging. If you feel the same, like you're making a payment every single month and those amounts aren't moving, this is definitely a solution for you. Anyone with $8,000 or more in debt qualifies, and there is no minimum credit score required. So if you've got bad or fair credit, you are accepted. And everybody's situation is different and they really want to cater to that. So PDS Debt is offering my Sip and Dale's free credit reports just for completing the quick and easy debt assessment. You can do that over at www.pdsdebt.com/Dale. That's pdsdebt.com/Dale. Like I said, I wish I had a solution like this. I take the stress of debt very seriously because I was there for so long. So if you are too, don't be ashamed, don't be embarrassed if you're struggling. It's possible to get out of, it's possible to get your financial freedom back. And this is one of those ways to help take off some of that pressure. So if you want help doing that today, make sure to head over to www.pdsdebt.com/Dale. Thank you again, PDS Debt, for all you do, for the support on the channel, and for the support and help to any of my Sip and Dales that make their way to you. All right, today's riddle, shout out to my mom for finding it. Good job, Mumsy. All right, the riddle is, I can fly but have no wings. I can cry but I have no tears. Wherever I go, darkness follows me. What am I? All right, today's case, we are taking it back to 1995. If you're a regular Sip and Dale, you know the 90s is my jam. I just live through talking in 90s quotes. I just spat everywhere. The majority of my vocabulary is just quotes from 90s movies and Friends. What always pains me when I do a case in the 90s, and then I think about the fact that somebody's loved one was taken from them in this era. So when they look back on it, it's the start of when their life changed and they started living with a pain that they never prepared for. And this is what happened to the Slemmer Martinez family on January 13th, 1995, when a groundskeeper for the University of Tennessee came across the mutilated body of a young woman. He was doing his morning rounds, as he always does, just checking the area, and he notices a jacket and a shirt that is hanging up in the trees. And he looks below it and he sees what he thinks is an injured dog or a dog that's passed. This kind of goes back to when we were talking about a lot of people who think they're coming across a mannequin sometimes. And I think it's just the protection instinct that we have where our minds don't want to automatically go to, oh my gosh, this is a person. As he walks closer, he realizes it is in fact a young woman. He calls the police, and when the police arrive, they are met with one of the most heartbreaking and gruesome scenes they've ever seen. They find a young woman who is partially nude. She has countless injuries to her body, one of them being a pentagram that was carved into her chest. I would imagine coming across a scene like this, another thing that would really affect you for the rest of your life is seeing that it was clear this woman fought for her life due to the injuries that were on her back. It was obvious that she was trying to run away and someone kept stopping her and using a weapon to try to incapacitate her. Pretty quickly, the police realize they've got their work cut out for them, not only to find who did this to this poor woman, but who she was. She was found without any identification on her. All she was wearing were her sneakers, a bra that was half off of her, and a pair of jeans with no ID in the pockets. The first thing they tried to do to identify her was to see if there was any missing persons reported in the area recently. Unfortunately, there wasn't. Since she was close to the university property, they went to the university to see if maybe a student was missing that hadn't come to the police to be reported missing. Unfortunately, again, nobody was reported missing at the university. So the decision is made that the police are probably going to get the best assistance from the public. They release a statement giving a brief description of the young woman that they found, saying that she appeared to be between 19 and 25 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes. And if anybody has a friend matching that description that you haven't heard from for a day or two, come forward and talk to us. As they're waiting to hear back from the public, a phone call comes through from a parent of a student attending a school close by, but it's not the University of Tennessee. They were a student at the Job Corps Center that was close by. And this parent said her daughter had just had a conversation with her regarding a few students that made her feel pretty uncomfortable due to their obsession in Satanism. This parent said she wasn't sure if it had anything to do with the young woman that was found, but she thought maybe any information can be useful information. She didn't have the names of the students, but it was a good starting point. The detectives went to Job Corps Center. And Job Corps was a program that was developed where if you had a lower income, you could get affordable training to better your chances of getting a well-paying career. The detectives asked the staff if there's any students that are unaccounted for, and off the top of their head, they said no, but they do use a sign-in, sign-out system so that they can kind of keep tabs of who is coming and going. So they go and check that out. And sure enough, the day before finding the young woman's body, a group of 4 students signed out, and only a couple hours later, 3 of those signed back in. The student that didn't sign back in was a young woman named Colleen Slemmer from Orange Park, Florida. Colleen was the second daughter to her mother May and father Michael Slemmer. She was born on September 20th, 1975, and she grew up very close to her older sister Heidi. Colleen is described as such a lovable child. You can definitely get that impression just from looking at photos of her. When the girls were kids, their parents separated and remarried. Their mom, May, remarried a Navy officer named Raul Martinez, who Colleen loved spending time playing computer games with. That was actually a big part of her life, family and computer games. She considered herself to be a computer nerd. She was a good student and child, but she struggled with a reading disability that made things very difficult for her to do well in school. She ended up dropping out in the 9th grade because in those days, if you struggled, you were pretty much left in the dust and got so behind, it became overwhelming to catch up with your other classmates. I think the misconception in some of these situations is that if you are a school dropout, you're a bad seed, and that really isn't always the case, especially when it came to Colleen. She's described as fun-loving. She liked roller skating, anything to do with computers, and really liked doing arts and crafts. She loved children, loved babysitting, and because of the struggles that she found herself having in school, she did a lot of volunteer work with children who were also struggling learning, just to make them feel like they were supported and understood. Colleen's just described as someone who has the biggest heart and always going out of her way to let her loved ones know that they are loved and appreciated, whether it just be telling them or getting them a little gift that they could open. Even if it was something small and she didn't have the money for it, she was always somebody going out of her way to give to others, to let them know that they were loved. She was seen as almost too trusting of people sometimes. She never wanted to see the bad in anybody. And it was something people who knew her brought to her attention, but also didn't want to prevent her from having that perception of people. She had a few jobs in the service industry like Red Lobster, Taco Bell, Wendy's. Love Wendy's. I'm like salivating for a spicy chicken sandwich right now. After a couple years of those jobs, she wanted more for herself. So she attends this job fair and she learns about Job Corps, and they're offering this computer training course. She could take it in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was only 6 months, and by doing this, it would open up a whole new set of opportunities for her. Her family didn't really want her to go, but the course that they offered in Florida for a similar training was a lot more expensive. So they supported her and just had the constant reminder to themselves, like, it's not forever, she's going to be home soon. She left her family, who had just recently added a new family member, little baby Sophia, to the roster. She was anxious to get back to everybody, but she was also excited to, set out and go on this adventure in Knoxville, Tennessee, and be quite independent for the first time. She heads out the beginning of September 1994, arrives in Knoxville, very optimistic, being the new girl in town. She's going to make a lot of new friends. I think she was imagining this glamorous campus life, but when she arrived, it was definitely not what she had built up in her head. The dorms looked like almost like a rundown motel. There was graffiti on the walls. The walls were painted black. They had this dark purple roof. It was just dark and depressing, and definitely not the vision that she had in her head. So now she's the one reassuring herself, okay, this is temporary and we're only going to be here for a little while. It was only 3 weeks in, she was already calling her mom, letting her know it wasn't going well. She was feeling depressed. She said she wanted to come home, and it was the first time her mom had heard Colleen not be optimistic, which was very unlike her. She also told her there were times she was feeling unsafe because there were students that were stalking her. She said they had gone into her room when she wasn't there and stolen some things from her. And it was all stemming because one of them thought that Colleen was interested in her boyfriend. Even though this is unlike Colleen and so hard for her mom to hear, she is reassuring her it's going to be over soon. We have signed a contract that they will not let you out of. We won't get our money back, but wants things to stop and for Colleen to feel more safe and supported. So she tells her to go and talk to the guidance counselor. She takes her mom's advice. She goes and reports the incidents to the counselor, but left feeling very unsupported and like she wasn't taken seriously at all. He was like, yeah, okay, I'll look into it. And then that was all she ever heard of it. So Colleen just decides to put all of her efforts and focus into completing this course, getting good grades. She knows it's going to be worth it. And she is happy in her element, learning about computers and figuring out a way to make a career out of this. A career out of this. When Christmas break 1994 rolled around, Colleen was so thankful to get the chance to get off campus, go visit her family, have a little reset. She spent the time with her father in Pennsylvania for 2 weeks and had an amazing time. She left feeling like it was exactly what she needed to do to get through her last month that she had in Tennessee. Her family was also counting down the days until she was home. And on January 12th, when Colleen spoke to her mom, it felt like she was in the home stretch. Nothing seemed to be too out of ordinary on the call. Colleen was anxious to get home. She did say she wished there was still a way for her to just come home and not break a contract. And her mom was just being a mom and reassuring her it was going to be okay and she was going to be home soon. When they ended the call, Colleen had told her mother May she was just going to go to Blockbuster with another student to get a movie and just hang out and take it easy for the rest of the night. What Colleen's mom didn't know was the student that she was going to Blockbuster with was a girl named Christa Pike, and she was the same student that Colleen was telling her mom about when she had called from Job Corps only 3 weeks in, who was accusing Colleen of trying to steal her boyfriend. Christa's upbringing was quite different from Colleen's. She was born premature to Carissa and Glenn Pike on March 10th, 1976 in North Carolina. When she was born, she was immediately taken to a different hospital than where her mom was staying because she needed to be in the neonatal unit. And her mom believed that this really hindered their early bonding moments. She felt like she never had that emotional, maternal connection to Christa. Glenn worked out of town and Carissa worked a couple jobs, which would leave Christa to spend a lot of time with family in those early years so that her mom could work and pay bills. And then when she was 2, her parents divorced, which left her mom to rely on even more help so that she could work longer hours to pay the bills. When Christa's mother did have free time, she didn't spend it at home with her daughter. She usually used those opportunities to go out and spend nights out on the town, go on dates. So she relied on her mother, Christa's grandmother, to watch Christa while she was gone. And while a lot of kids out there would probably love spending time with grandma, Christa did not have that experience with her grandmother. Her grandma was somebody who was a heavy drinker. She was quite abusive, and she would often lock Christa in closets for long periods of time. Then when she was at home with her mom, the condition of the house is explained as not at all acceptable for a child to be in. Christa's aunt said she would often come by to check on how things were going, and it was just filthy. And not being judgy, like, oh, you have an unkept house, but there were times that Christa would be crawling around in dog poop. Christa's aunt said she would do her best to try to take the kids when she could or come over and feed them and make sure they were being bathed when she was around, but she didn't have the resources to raise her. And I'm sure it's something that she really struggled with, because when you look at Christa, she was such a beautiful little girl with these big brown eyes, an adorable smile, and her life probably would have been very different had she been given a different opportunity growing up. Christa did briefly have some normalcy in her life when her mother had met a man and run off with him, and Christa and her sister had gone to live with their paternal grandmother. And she was the grandmother that was described as the grandma that you would want. She was very loving and sweet, and Christa was glued to her side. Sadly, though, when Christa was only 12, her grandmother died of cancer, and this was a turning point for her. This was when she started to lash out because she realized the only sense of love and comfort that she had ever known was now gone. And she took out her heartbreak on everybody around her through anger and rage, whether it was family members or teachers. She was unmanageable, and even at 12 years old, she tried to overdose on medication. The school recommended to her mother that it would probably be a good idea for Christa to receive some therapy. And again, in those younger years of hers, it may have changed her course, but her mom only took her to one session and she never went and spoke to anybody again after that. Then through the years, she really started to feel that abandonment. She was just shipped back and forth from her mother to her father. When one couldn't handle her and her outbursts, they would just send her back to the other parent, and this just continually repeated itself. When she became a teenager, she stayed mostly with her mom, and I think that's because her mom's new approach to Christa was, I'm not going to try to parent you, I'm going to be your friend. Her mom started drinking with her in those early years. Christa just came and went as she pleased. She was smoking pot at 13. She was allowed to have a boyfriend come and live with them. She just had no guidance, no consequences. She eventually dropped out of school and would just stay out at all hours of the night. It wasn't until an incident happened where Christa and her friends got in some trouble with police when I believe they tried to break into somebody's house. And it was then that her mom tried to instill some direction. Her mom told her enough was enough, and she was being enrolled in the Job Corps Center to take a nursing course. And that's how she arrived at the same school as Colleen. Quickly after Christa arrives, she realizes she's going to be just fine. She saw it as an opportunity to socialize. She made friends easy, and not too long after getting there, she catches the eye of another student named Tadero Sher. Tadero was born in Mississippi, but when he was a child, the family moved to Memphis with his mom and stepfather. I guess this move caused a lot of stress for little Tadero. He didn't vocalize it, but his grades quickly went from A's and B's to failing. As he got into his teens, he withdrew from his family and started rebelling by practicing Satanism. When he was 16, his mom finally had enough, and she sent him to the Job Corps Center. Initially, she wanted to send him to military school, but it was too expensive. So he was sent to Job Corps, and she was hoping this was going to give him some direction. He wasn't there long when Christa arrived. He said one day he saw her sitting on the steps and she looked really upset, kind of crying, so he went over to see if she was okay. She just told him she was unhappy and didn't really want to be there, which seems to kind of be the general consensus of everybody who went there. So he just sat and talked with her for hours, and just from that day of comforting her, it led to a quick, intense relationship. She tried to lock him down pretty much as soon as they met. She fell hard and fast and describes that relationship as being the first one that ever made her feel safe and loved. And she didn't want to let go of that feelings. She was very territorial and possessive. She was exclusive to him, but I guess Tadero wasn't always exclusive to her. Allegedly, when Christa went back home to visit family during Thanksgiving, Tadero stayed behind at Job Corps, and Colleen also had stayed behind. And according to Tadero, he and Colleen had hooked up during this time while Christa was away. Colleen denied this, and it's very unclear how the rumor started, but I mean, it's not hard to start a rumor, especially when you're in that close, tight, communal living situation. It just took a whisper that something had happened between Tadero and Colleen, and so when Christa came back and she hears it, she flies off the handle and confronts the two of them. Even though they both strongly denied it, Christa became obsessed with getting to the bottom of it and having them both admit it to her. It sounds like it really consumed her, and a lot of the anger and the harassment fell to Colleen and not to Tadero. Colleen had been absolutely exhausted from all the drama, which I'm sure is also a big part of why she loved going to visit her family for those 2 weeks during Christmas break. It kind of just gave her a chance to just let it go, clear her head, reset, and just move forward to finish up her term. And when she returned to campus, she thought, okay, well, maybe that 2 weeks was, good for everybody, because when she comes back, Christa had seemed to chill out a bit as well, and she was being much kinder to her. So on January 12th, when Christa asks Colleen to come to the Blockbuster with her, she thought, okay, maybe this is a really good opportunity to wrap up this whole Job Corps experience on a more positive note. She was uneasy about it, but remember, she's also described as very trusting. She always chose to see the good in other people, and that's what she went with. So after Colleen hangs up with her mom and says that she's going to meet Christa to go to the Blockbuster, she's walking up to meet her, and she sees that Tadero is also there, and so is one of Christa's friends named Shadala Peterson. And seeing the two other people gave her just a little bit of sense of relief that it wasn't going to be so awkward, just the two of them. She didn't know too much about Shadala. She was a very quiet person and had enrolled in Job Corps to make a better life for herself. She had grown up in Cleveland with her family in poverty, and she wanted to break that cycle and make a life for herself. Shadala and Christa were two opposite people, and not someone you would probably pair as friends, but sometimes opposites attract. So they became good friends. So as the four are walking, heading to the Blockbuster together, Christa brings up that she has some Mary Jane hidden at a park nearby called Tyson Park. She suggests, let's take a little detour, have a little smoke, and then head to Blockbuster. Listen, I don't know if you have ever been to Blockbuster stoned. I have. It's probably one of the most memorable experiences of my life to date. I was with one of my best friends, and he and I still talk about it to this day. I would not recommend it though. I mean, you can't anyways because Blockbuster is gone. But I'm telling you, you run into everybody in a Blockbuster on a Friday night. And we did. And we were young. So it was all our friends with their parents. And everybody knew. Maybe this group didn't do that before though. So seemed like a good idea at the time. They all agree and say, okay, yeah, let's go check it out. As they're walking into the park, there's a sign that says that it closes at 9 p.m. It's around 8 p.m. So the group's like, okay, let's make this quick. They get walking and walking and walking. And it's not a very smooth path. There's some areas that are slippery. It was a little wet outside. It was cold too. And Colleen started getting annoyed. It didn't even feel, worth having any pot for. All she wanted was to leave school on a positive note with Christa. And now she's like, what are we doing? So she just stops and she says, there's no weed, is there? And Christa, all proud of herself, says, no, there isn't. Colleen asks her why she's all the way out here. And Christa tells her she wants to get to the bottom of what happened between her and Tadero. And Colleen is livid. She says, what the hell is wrong with you? I do not know how many times, how many ways I can tell you I'm not into him. And all of a sudden, Christa assaults Colleen. She just wreaks havoc on her, punching her over and over and over and kicking her. Colleen's just on the ground begging for help, crying. She keeps telling her, I can't believe you brought me here to do this. At one point, she's able to get up and she starts running. But Tadero, who has been standing back with Shadala, sticks his foot out and trips her so that she can't run away. And Christa starts screaming for him to start attacking her. And so he does. Colleen again finds the strength to get up, run away. But Christa gets a hold of this heavy rock and she's able to throw it at Colleen, and it hits her and knocks her to the ground. Christa at this point approaches Colleen and takes out this box cutter that she had brought with her, and she just starts swinging and cutting. Colleen's will to survive was so strong. Even while she's being attacked, she's able to talk to Christa and try to get her to stop a little. She said, just let me go. I won't even go back to the dorm and get my things. I will just go to Florida. I won't tell anybody anything. Just please let me go. Christa starts panicking. She's screaming at her to stop talking. I think because she's thinking in her head, I don't know if I want to do this. You know, I've taken it so far, but should I let her go? And Shadala tells Christa, you have to do something. If you let her go, she's going to tell on you. Christa just screams at Colleen. She's not going to rot in jail over her and just keeps attacking her. At this point, she tells Colleen to take off her jacket and her shirt. She's hoping that if she's exposed and feels vulnerable, it'll prevent her from running away. There is a point again where Christa stops briefly because she thinks she can hear somebody in the distance, and Colleen uses this opportunity to try to muster the last remaining ounces of strength that she has, but Christa grabs her and takes out a mini meat cleaver that she also brought with her and starts hitting her with it. What Colleen went through was worse than hell. The attack took place for over 45 minutes. She suffered absolute agony. At one point, Tadero carved a pentagram in her chest. She was covered in gashes to her stomach, her back, her throat, all while she's still alive begging for her life. The attack ended when Christa found a big chunk of asphalt and used it to repeatedly hit Colleen in the head with it. That attack was so bad that Christa was able to take a piece of Colleen's skull and keep it as a souvenir, as she called it. Christa, Shadala, and Tadero left Colleen's body and they went to rinse off at a creek that was nearby. And then from there, they went to a gas station to tidy themselves up some more. On the areas of their clothes where there was blood-soaked stains, they just took mud and wiped it on there to make it look like they had just fallen while they were on a walk. I'm not really sure what the purpose of cleaning up and trying to cover their tracks were in the first place, though, because as soon as Christa gets out of the shower at the dorms, she excitedly goes over to her girlfriend's room and tells her that she just killed Colleen. She tells her just as breezy and as casual as if she's just shooting the shit with her. Her friend initially thinks she's joking just because of how calm she is. There were moments that she was concerned though, because I guess earlier on in the day, Christa had told her, I'm gonna kill Colleen. In her mind though, she just thinks it's a form of expression because she can't stand her, like, oh, I'm gonna kill her. And she didn't know what to think. She said Christa was dancing around her room. She just looked all hyped up on adrenaline, and she even pulls out this piece of skull and shows it to her and says this is Colleen's, but she's thinking it's a prank. Like, this is something that she found outside. She's messing with me right now. So she doesn't tell anybody. They go to bed, and it's the next day that Colleen is found in the morning by the groundskeeper. And as she's being found, Christa is in class and she's sitting with another one of her girlfriends, and she looks down at her foot and she sees that there's blood on it. And she tells her friend, hey, look down, look at my shoe. Friend's like, okay, what is that? And she says, it's not mud, it's Colleen's blood. Pulls out the skull fragment and shows this student as well and tells her that it's Colleen's. This friend also is in disbelief, doesn't know what to think, so she just tries to go on with her day like what a weird, unsettling obsession that you have with this girl, but not thinking that she actually did something to her. I guess after school around 4 p.m., Christa's curious to see if anybody has found Colleen. So she goes and finds another friend and asks her to go with her to check out the park. This friend agrees. Along the way, I guess they wrangle up a few more friends. And as they're walking, they see this huge group of officers and reporters. And the scene is all taped up. So Christa goes up to one of the officers and says, oh, what's going on? And when he tells her a body's been found, instead of being concerned, like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? She's like, oh, do you know who? Do you have any suspects? I guess this officer said no, but in his mind was like, that's very odd questions for this young woman to have. Usually in a situation like that, especially around a campus or school, you'd be worried for your own safety. But she wasn't concerned at all. He had to actually ask Christa to leave with her friends because she was walking around the perimeter trying to find areas where she could go and get a closer look where it wasn't taped off. Thankfully, even though he asked her to leave, it wasn't long until she was brought back into police custody after that mom had called the police that afternoon, and they got the tip to go to Job Corps and saw that sign-out sheet where Colleen's name was missing. The ball got rolling. I guess it was at 5 a.m. that the police went to each one of their dorms. They just catch Tadero, Shadala, and Christa off guard and say, "You've got to come in to answer some questions." They start with Christa and they ask if she wants to talk about the body that was just discovered, and she says she does, but she says it's only under the condition that she doesn't have to speak about the two other individuals that were with her. So the detective agrees, and she goes on and gives a full confession. She says the reason for killing Colleen is that they had issues, and she accused Colleen of testing her patience and at sometimes getting in her face and being aggressive. To this day, Christa's confession is something that just keeps the detective that she spoke to up at night because of how little emotion was there. She went on for a good hour detailing everything that happened during the attack. And he describes it as really eerie because he's looking at her and he sees, you know, this young woman with this almost baby face to her, and to just almost nonchalantly talk about the things that she did. There were a couple times where it sounded like she was almost trying to cry, but almost kind of talking in a baby voice and detailing what she did. He said he was really struggling aligning, you know, her features and her actions with like this evilness that was coming out of her.
I don't even think I was just like that because she made me so mad. And for me, I just couldn't with her. And she was just going, please don't. I said, shut up, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want you to talk to me. I said, I just want to find some way to get out of this. I said, it's gone too far. I need to do what I've done so far.
She does say that killing Colleen was not what she planned to do. She describes it as not really knowing what came over her. She knew she was committing the actions that were taking place, but it was almost like she was having an out-of-body experience watching herself do it. The detective asks if Tadero or Shadala are involved, and the only thing that she says is she doesn't want to see anything happen to them. Even when they bring up that they know Tadero has some interest in Satanism and they ask about why there was a pentagram cut on Colleen, she wouldn't implicate him at all. She just said she wanted to take responsibility for everything. She didn't want to see anything happen to him. She just kept saying what a great guy he was, what a promising future he had ahead of him, and she didn't want anything bad to happen to him. After they're done talking to Christa, they talk to Tadero as well, and he's upfront and cooperative. His story matches Christa's, but he also implicates himself. There was definitely talk and curiosity from the detectives about why he cut this pentagram in Colleen, and he says that that was an afterthought. He said he had a fascination with the devil and worshiping him, and he thought, okay, well, since we're here and this is happening, maybe this will be considered a sacrifice. After Tadero's confession, Shadala is questioned. She admits to being part of a plan to intimidate Colleen, but says she had no idea that anything was going to happen to Colleen in terms of taking her life. So on January 15th, 1995, 2 days after the killing, all three of them were arrested. And it's just so tragic and infuriating because the whole reason why they didn't want to let Colleen live was because they didn't want to get in trouble. They didn't want to get caught and go to jail for attempted murder. But then when they leave, Christa just goes and starts telling everybody the second she gets to the dorm. And 24 hours later, you happily give a full confession. Yeah, there's a few times I was raging while I was reading a book on this case. And there was not really anything that I could find online. So I had to order a book and have like a real copy in my hands sent to me. So when I'd get really frustrated, like I would just be like, squish the pages. The book is called A Love to Die For by Patricia Springer. And if you like reading true crime books and miss having a hard copy of a book, I definitely recommend checking out the site Thrift Books, which is where I found it from. And I'm pretty sure I saw extra copies that were still on on thrift books. It definitely goes into more detail about what happened, but you know me, I don't like to be too graphic, not only just because it's triggering for a lot of people, but even me. There's a lot of parts in books and research that I have to go past or take like really long mental breaks from. I think another part that is really frustrating in this is that there were 3 people involved in what happened to Colleen, and it's sad that at any point, Shadala or Tadero could have really turned things around. Either of them could have said, you know, we'll figure this out, just stop. Instead, one participated by tripping Colleen and attacking her himself. And then Shadala panicked because she thought the best thing to do was silence her. The 3 of them were charged with first-degree murder. Tadero was charged as a juvenile, so he was spared the option of a death sentence because he was only 17. Christa was 18, so she was not tried as a juvenile. And Shadala's charges eventually were dropped from first-degree murder to accessory. Then she agreed to testify at the trials. So for her cooperation, her sentence was only 6 years on probation. So as of 2002, she was done serving her sentence. In March 1996 is when Christa's trial started. She was the first to go on trial. Like I said, hers was a death penalty case. After her arrest, she was seen by a psychiatrist and she was diagnosed with severe borderline personality disorder. They believe her dependence on her relationship with Tadero was so strong, and in her mind, anything and everything could be a threat of taking that away from her and him abandoning her like everybody in her life had. And I'm going to be real with you. Reading some of this was very tough for me because I could relate to growing up and feeling a lot of those abandonment issues. There was even a point in my life where I spoke to a psychiatrist who also thought that I had borderline personality disorder. And I think even in that time of my life, like that was a very accurate diagnosis. But we've said it before on the channel. We'll say it again. It's just, while we can sympathize and relate and understand what somebody might have been going through, it's no excuse to just say that it justifies taking somebody's life. We're all going through something. We've all gone through something. So 2.5 hours after the jury was sent to deliberate, they came back with a guilty verdict. And at sentencing, she was sentenced to death, making her the youngest woman to sit on death row. At Tadero's trial, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison plus life. He's eligible to apply for parole in, I believe, 2028. At his trial, though, there were some witnesses that came forward that had implied that Tadero had planned to take somebody's life, not necessarily Colleen's, but there was a plan that could lead to like a first-degree murder charge. A few days prior to Colleen's murder, Tadero had gone to a friend and said that he had to make a human sacrifice because the celestial bodies were in alignment, and he was talking to the devil through this Ouija board that he had. Allegedly, Tadero is married, not to Christa. His wife popped off on some people in the comments on a video that I was watching. She said in there something that just really rubbed me the wrong way. She said he's a changed man and to get over it, that it's getting old when people talk about the case. Yeah, I'm sorry. Hearing about the case and the actions that took place and the young woman that lost her life will never get old. If you come across this video, as much as you might want people to forget what your husband participated in, Colleen's family does not. And many of the family members of the victims that we speak about feel the same. They don't want their loved ones forgotten. They don't want what happened to their loved ones forgotten. They're without this person that meant the world to them, and it's because of something your loved one participated in. I do believe that people can feel remorse. They can change. They can get an education in jail. They can change their religion. They can participate in productive programs, but it doesn't erase what they did. It doesn't make what they did just go away. That's still part of their life. And just my personal opinion, and it's not to judge or anything, but I believe that if you are marrying somebody who's in prison for murder. I mean, you know that. You know what you're signing up for. So to go out of your own way to say, you get over it, you know, and cause even more pain to a family, I don't like that. Don't like it. Christa has also done several interviews where she talks about also being a changed woman, and she wants her death sentence changed to life in prison. She attributes her actions to her childhood trauma and her mental illness. She has admitted that she doesn't feel that it's an excuse and that she shouldn't be punished for what she's done. She just keeps bringing up that the punishment she received and then other prisoners who committed a similar crime with a similar background with trauma and mental illness did not receive the same sentence as she did. And again, I do believe that people can change. I also believe that undiagnosed mental illness and her upbringing played a big part. However, she has made other decisions since being in prison that haven't really aligned with her saying that she's, you know, completely changed. On August 24th, 2001, August 24th is my birthday. It's always so weird when it's your birthday. Christa and another inmate friend of hers attacked another inmate and attempted to strangle her with shoelaces, and they actually probably would have killed her, but a guard had seen and was able to run into the courtyard, and he saved this other woman's life, but she was unconscious when he found her. So then Christa received another 25 years added to her sentence after that. And then in March 2012, she had wrangled up a corrections officer and a pen pal to try to help her escape from jail. I guess she had been talking with this one fellow for about a year through the mail, and then several times a month he would go and visit Christa in jail, and I guess the distance between his house and the jail was like 1,800 miles, and he would do it twice a month. And then he buddies up with this one correctional officer that's at the jail, and they like make some plan to try to replicate one of the card passes, and it was this big thing, and then they got caught. Everything's pretty concealed with like how that all went down though, because the prison still wants to, you know, prevent anything from floating some ideas out there and like other prisoners trying to escape. So there's not too much known. But anyway, she didn't get out. They got caught. But still, it's like, girl, are you changed or are you not changed? I think one thing to keep in mind also is like with all of these new charges and issues coming about, it brings up emotions and pain for Colleen's family, who have to revisit everything all over again. As of June 2021, there still is no execution date set for Christa, and it's something that Colleen's mother is very vocal about. She's been begging for the Tennessee Supreme Court to set a date because she feels like until that's done, she just can't fully move forward. Her mom is so strong. She's endured so much. Even when she had to go down to Tennessee to identify her daughter through photographs, she's trying to process that her daughter's gone. She's not really able to accept it. She goes to the dorm to collect Colleen's belongings, and her room had been ransacked and everything had been stolen. All she was able to leave with were 3 pairs of Colleen's socks. So one thing that is really hard for May, Colleen's mom, is that at this point in time, until Christa is put to death or there's no more appeals, that skull fragment of Colleen's has to stay in evidence. So it's like she doesn't even fully have her daughter back, and she feels like she can't move forward, you know, without all of Colleen. Colleen's sister also recently passed away due to complications from COVID. So her family, her mom has endured so much. I read she finds comfort in going to have dinner at Red Lobster where Colleen once worked, and it just kind of makes her feel like she's in an environment that her daughter was once in and feels closer to her. Colleen's family has been on my mind this whole time that I've been researching this, and hearing her mom speak about her and feeling, you know, like she's almost like in this limbo, it just makes my heart break. It's one of those situations where you're like, okay, well, like, can we just figure out how we can switch the rules here so she can have her daughter back in full. I can't imagine. I will definitely be checking in on them and giving you updates if and when they come. I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video, I wanted to give a huge thank you to Holly Rose, who suggested that I look into this on our Facebook group. I hadn't heard about this case, and I always do appreciate learning about ones that I don't know about, so we can spread more awareness and, you know, let families out there like Colleen's know they're not forgotten. We haven't forgotten about them, and we support whatever they need from us. All right, you guys, that is it for me today. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. You know I love and I appreciate you so much. I hope you can feel my virtual squeezes. I just love ya. The answer to today's riddle, quick refresher: I can fly, but I have no wings. I can cry, but I have no eyes. Wherever I go, darkness follows me. What am I? And the answer is clouds. All right, I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon.